That slaps you out of your routine and tells you clear as day, here's the fight you didn't know you were signing up for. Mine showed up 3 weeks after I finished building my bridge. White envelope, gold embossed return address, Crescent Pines, HOA Compliance and Infrastructure Division. Now maybe that should have set off alarms right then, but I just thought Infrastructure Division. Since when I didn't even know the HOA had divisions, let alone anything to do with infrastructure. Hell, I was still wearing my welding gloves when I tore it open, hands greasy mined halfway on the smell of burnt coffee in my kitchen. Inside a bill. Not a neighborly thank you, not a hey nice job on that bridge, but a bill. $7,632 for shared bridge maintenance and structural upgrades. I laughed out loud all alone in my cabin, staring at this paper like it was a joke. Because see, that bridge was my escape. My 6-weekend blood and sweat project paid out of my own pocket so I could have peace and quiet way out at the edge of the HOA boundary. Their boundary, not mine, if you asked me. The original access road washed out years before I ever showed up, so I built my own way across the creek. No help, no money from the HOA. County guy even looked at me sideways when I said I'd pull the permits myself. "You're doing that alone?" he asked, and I just shrugged. And now out of nowhere I'm getting billed for shared maintenance on something they never touched. Next morning I drove right down to the HOA office, beige stucco, next to the golf course with all the fake grandeur of a gated community smack dab in the middle of nowhere. Inside was Zelda Zimmerman, HOA president, pastel sweater vest, hair so shellacked it looked like a helmet smile, sharp as a tack. You know the type always got her eye out for the guy who parks an inch over the line. She flips through a folder with my name on it, all sweet and official. "Well, well, Mr. Ryland Jacobs. We've been expecting you." I didn't bother with small talk. "You sent me a bill for a bridge I built myself. What kind of scam is this?" She didn't even blink. "That bridge connects to the community's emergency access route. Under Article 12, subsection C, it qualifies as shared infrastructure." I barked a laugh. "There was no bridge till I built one. It doesn't connect to any HOA road, just my place." Her smile didn't crack. "Our legal team reviewed this. If you want to contest, fill out Form 11A. There's a $25 processing fee." Honestly, it felt like I'd walked into some bizarro customer service hell. "You people are unbelievable," I muttered. "You're part of the HOA now, Mr. Jacobs. We all do our part, even the rugged types." That's what she whispered, all fake conspiratorial, like she was letting me in on a secret. I left before I said something I'd regret. Back at the cabin, I started pulling permits, blueprints, all the photos from my construction. Then I dove into zoning maps, property lines, HOA bylaws. It took hours, but eventually I found it proof Zelda was bluffing. The bridge was 100% on my parcel, and that emergency route didn't exist. Not legally. Just a line on a proposal from years ago rejected by the county. So next day I drove to the county records office place, smelled like ancient carpet and stale coffee. The clerk, tough as nails, pulled the surveys and easements within 10 minutes. My land clear as daylight Bridge Creek woods. Only access was my bridge. No shared anything, no emergency trail, just a footnote in a proposal from 15 years ago stamped rejected in red. I left with a folder full of evidence and a fire in my belly. That night I set up a trail cam on the bridge. Something about the whole thing felt off, especially after spotting boot prints near my shed. I wasn't about to let my work get sabotaged. By morning, the camera had already paid off. Reviewing footage over coffee, I damn near choked 2:17 a.m. A guy in a reflective vest screws a metal sign into my handrail. I zoom in. Property of Crescent Pines, HOA shared emergency access. Unauthorized use prohibited. That's when it hit me. They weren't just billing me, they were trying to fabricate ownership. I printed the photos, drove straight to the sheriff. Deputy Latham, usually half asleep, sat up when he saw the video. "That's tampering with private property. You file a trespass complaint yet?" "No, figured I'd show you first." He walked me through the paperwork, said he'd check it out personally. Next I called Lenny, my buddy from welding days, now a county engineer. He came out clipboard in hand, boots, muddy thermos of gas station coffee. "Walked the bridge, tapped the beams. You overbuilt Ryland. You could drive a tank over this." He wrote me a notarized report, bridge privately built and maintained, no HOA involvement. I dropped copies at the sheriff's, and the zoning board then sent a cease and desist to the HOA, complete with the midnight sign photos. Silence. For a week, nothing. Then a fat letter from the HOA legal liaison, Trent Maloney, printed on paper, thick as cardboard. Now they were accusing me of obstructing emergency infrastructure and endangering the community. Threatened a lien on my property if I didn't pay up, plus a non-compliance penalty. It was never about the bridge, it was about precedent. If I got away, others might try it. So I called my cousin Mara, ADA in the next county. She's allergic to bull. Sounds like civil fraud and coercion, she said, after reading the documents. If they're assigning ownership where there is none, I'll make some calls. 3 days later, a state investigator reached out. Turns out Crescent Pines HOA had pulled stunts like this before. One woman paid wildlife fence fees for a fence that never existed, got scared, moved away. The investigator asked for my documentation for a broader case. I was all in. But Zelda wasn't backing down. Weekend after, I caught her out on the trail with 2 guys and clipboards gesturing at my land like it was her personal monopoly board. I watched from my porch, coffee in hand, until I had enough. Walked down, leaned against the post. Afternoon, Zelda. Bringing city inspectors to your fantasy road? She jumps. This is a formal HOA inspection. Not on this land, it isn't. And those guys aren't inspectors. I called the county. No permits for this. One of the clipboard men shifts, nervous. Am I being recorded? Yep. My property, my rules. Zelda tightens her lips. You've made this unnecessarily difficult. You tried to steal my work, trespassed, planted fake signs, and lied to your board. But sure, I'm the problem. She left in a huff. That night, I sent the latest round of evidence to the state investigator, photos, audio, every last email. A week later, subpoenas hit the HOA. County sheriff raided their office. The audit found $80,000 in phantom maintenance charges, money billed for projects never completed or never started. HOA accounts frozen. Zelda claimed clerical errors. Trent, her legal guy, skipped town. State flagged him for questioning. Deputy Latham swung by a few days later. You'll want to come to the next council meeting. They're talking about dissolving the HOA. First time I'd smiled in weeks. The emergency meeting was packed, folks lining the roadside, murmuring outside the doors, old-timers clutching thermoses. Not your usual bored crowd either. The whole neighborhood turned out. I brought my folder of evidence, forged signs, creative billing emails, a notarized letter from the former treasurer who'd resigned after Zelda blocked her from viewing project expenses. Inside, the air buzzed. Zelda looked 10 years older, flanked by her shell-shocked board. The mayor called the meeting to order and handed me the floor. The bridge they billed me for sits entirely on deeded private land built without HOA funding or oversight. They labeled it shared emergency infrastructure to justify an illegal invoice. Zelda opened her mouth, but the mayor shut her down. I laid out every detail, photographic proof of trespass, audio of Zelda emails admitting they couldn't enforce payment but hoped nobody would check. That's fraud. Then a woman in the crowd spoke up. They billed me for a fence I never saw. Claimed it was for coyotes. I live by the highway. Another voice, $4,000 for drainage, but it's just a ditch on Zelda's street. The room exploded. People shouting, sharing stories, fake projects, mystery fees, threats for violations that didn't exist. The mayor had to bang his gavel for quiet. Enough. This is a criminal matter. We'll collect statements for the prosecutor. Zelda tried to blame misunderstandings, but no one was buying. That night, as statements continued, state officials arrived. Public integrity, financial crimes. They collected every document, requested digital files from the mayor. 4 hours, one after another, neighbors lined up with proof, fake charges, unexplained bills, threats for nothing. One guy had been charged for wildlife corridor restoration, which turned out to be a pile of mulch dumped in a ditch. Next morning, news vans staked out the HOA office. Zelda dodged the cameras, disappeared into her car. Later that day, the ADA called, wanted me to testify to the grand jury. My documents were central to the case. The hearing was held out of county, away from HOA influence. I wore my cleanest flannel boots, shined files in hand. Walked through everything: permits, maps, camera footage, HOA emails. By the end of the week, grand jury handed down indictments. Zelda and 2 board members, fraud, unlawful lien practices, falsifying documents. The kicker. They tried to fake digital parcel maps to claim my bridge crossed into a non-existent easement. That map had been passed around at the last HOA meeting. The judge ordered a full audit of every HOA action from the past 5 years. Verdict: guilty on all counts. Zelda 2 years in minimum security, 18 months probation. The other 2 house arrest restitution. The board member who cooperated got immunity. The town council dissolved. The old HOA put a committee in place until a new voluntary board could be elected, one with no power to fine, no liens, no compliance threats. The old office became a community tool shed and lending library. I didn't run for board, but I helped write the bylaws: short, clear, simple. No one holds office longer than a term. No property decisions without unanimous homeowner consent. No touching private land. No fees without a public vote. One Saturday in May, I was fixing a plank on my bridge when a crowd of neighbors gathered with folding chairs and coolers. Woman from downstream waved me over. Neighborhood potluck figured it's time we all met. No fines, no mailbox rules. I brought smoked venison, set it beside potato salad and lemonade. Folks chatted about spring floods, bears near the woods. Not a word about fines or rules. Sun dipped behind the trees. A kid played guitar. Marshmallows roasted over a fire pit built from patio stones. The mayor dropped by. No speech, just a quiet promise. We learned a lot here about trust power and what happens when people meant to protect start using fear instead. Won't happen again. No applause, just nods all around. A few days later, I got a letter. Not an invoice, not a threat. Just a note, ink smudged from a new neighbor. Thank you. Inside, a sketch of the bridge in charcoal. Built right. I hung it by the door. Cabin's quiet now. The bridge stands strong even through spring floods. The plaque I welded on the beam catches the morning sun. Private build, no HOA access, 2024. And you know what? I learned something. People will push and grab and try to take what isn't theirs, especially when they think you won't fight back. But sometimes all it takes is one person saying no and a whole community remembers what it feels like to stand up. So here's my question for you. Where's the line? When does protection turn to control? When does a rule meant to help become a weapon? Maybe you've got a story too. Share it below. Let's talk about what justice really means and how you draw the line.
Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video.